All right, you magnificent bastards. Welcome back to another deep dive. And today we're going to tackle something that's been pissing everyone off for ages. Why the hell don't we have an HIV vaccine yet? I mean, we're growing meat in a fucking dish, but we can't stop this tiny-ass virus. Makes you wonder if science has its priorities straight.
It's definitely more complicated than people think. HIV is like that slippery bastard in a heist movie, always 10 steps ahead.
Okay, let's cut the crap. We know it's bad news, and folks have been freaking out since, like, forever. But seriously, what makes this virus such a pain in the ass for the science nerds?
The main issue is how fast HIV mutates. It's like a goddamn chameleon on speed, changing its disguise constantly. Our immune system can barely keep up, let alone create a vaccine that actually targets the damn thing effectively.
So the usual vaccine tricks are out the window, like showing the body a mugshot of the virus so it knows what to whack.
Exactly. Most vaccines work by teaching the immune system to recognize and attack a specific bad guy. But with HIV changing its face faster than a con artist, those defenses become useless. It's like printing wanted posters with a blurry photo. Completely useless.
Shit's starting to sound like we're screwed.
Where
But wait, what about those monkey experiments everyone's always squawking about? Aren't they giving us some clues?
they are, but it's not a perfect system. We use SIV, which is like HIV's monkey cousin, to study the virus and test potential vaccines. But newsflash, monkeys aren't humans. There are some big differences between the viruses, and ethical concerns limit how much we can poke and prod those furry fellas.
Right, monkeys are cool and all, but not exactly our test dummies.
Yeah.
What about actual HIV vaccine trials on humans? Any close calls, or did they all crash and burn?
There have been some attempts, some more spectacular failures than others, but none have given us a vaccine we can actually use. Remember AIDS vax back in the day? Huge hype, massive letdown. It focused on getting the body to pump out antibodies, but as we've discussed, HIV laughs in the face of antibodies. They're practically useless against it.
So, a big fat fail. What a bummer. Any other train wrecks worth mentioning?
Oh yeah, there was this Merck trial using an adenovirus vector, which actually made some people more likely to get infected with HIV. Talk about a major backfire.
Wait, the vaccine made things worse? What the fuck? That's some seriously messed up science.
It was a harsh lesson. Turns out there's still a shit ton we don't know about how HIV interacts with the immune system. Sometimes poking it just pisses it off.
Right, so we've got one massive flop and one that basically backfired spectacularly. Any trials that gave us even a glimmer of hope? Something to cling to?
Well, there was RV144 in Thailand. This is the only trial to show any protection, but it was only about 30% effective.
30%. That's like using a condom with holes in it. Better than nothing, I guess, but not exactly reassuring.
Exactly. Plus, the protection didn't last long. RV144 proved that a vaccine could offer some defense, but it was far from what we need to actually beat this thing.
Okay, so we've had epic fails and one kind of sort of win that ultimately fizzled out. I'm officially depressed. Are we just fucked when it comes to an HIV vaccine? Is this the end of the story?
Not necessarily. Remember, science is stubborn as hell. We learn from every fuck-up, and new approaches are always popping up. One area that's got everyone buzzing is research on broadly neutralizing antibodies, or BNAbs for short. Think of them as the Navy SEALs of the immune system. Highly trained and deadly.
Navy SEALs, huh? Now you're talking. Tell me more about these badass antibodies.
These BNAbs can target those vital parts of HIV that the virus can't easily change without basically crippling itself.
So we're talking about HIV's Achilles heel, the chink in its armor.
Exactly. If we can figure out how to train the immune system to produce these BNAbs on demand, it could be a game changer.
All right, so BNAbs are elite soldiers. What other weapons are we cooking up in the HIV lab?
Another wild idea is something called mosaic vaccines. These bad boys are designed to deal with HIV's ridiculous diversity. They're like a Frankenstein's monster of vaccines, stitching together bits and pieces of different HIV strains.
So we're creating a super vaccine, a goddamn chimera to fight this shape-shifting bastard.
That's the idea. We're basically trying to make a vaccine that can cover all its bases no matter what form HIV decides to take.
Okay, that's some clever shit. But enough with the teases, give us the dirt. How do these mosaic vaccines actually work?
Essentially, they expose the immune system to a buffet of different HIV antigens, pieces of the virus that trigger an immune response.
So it's like showing the immune system a whole rogues gallery of HIV mugshots so it can recognize the bastard no matter what disguise it's wearing.
Precisely. The goal is to give the immune system enough information to develop those broadly neutralizing antibodies that can tackle a wider range of HIV strains.
Sounds promising, but is it actually working? Are we seeing any results with these mosaic vaccines?
It's still early days, but there are definitely some glimmers of hope. Some trials have shown hints of efficacy, which means the approach is on the right track.
Hints, huh? Don't be shy, Doc, spill the beans. What kind of results are we talking about?
One trial called HVTN 705 or Imbokodo tested a mosaic vaccine in young women in sub-Saharan Africa. It didn't show full-blown protection across the board, but there were some encouraging signs in certain groups.
All right, I'll take any good news I can get at this point. So, mosaic vaccines, Navy SEAL BNABs. What other tricks do you scientists have up your sleeves?
Well, there's another technology that's making waves in the vaccine world, mRNA vaccines.
mRNA vaccines, like the ones they whipped up for COVID. Those things are like magic.
Yeah, those. They've been a game changer, and now scientists are figuring out if they can work the same magic for HIV.
All right, I'm listening. Break it down for me. How do these mRNA vaccines work their voodoo?
It's pretty ingenious, actually. Instead of injecting a weakened virus or even just a part of it, we're injecting the instructions for building a specific viral protein.
So we're basically giving the body the blueprints to build its own HIV target practice dummy.
You got it. The cells then use those instructions to churn out the viral proteins, which triggers the immune system to start training.
That's some next level shit. So we're teaching the immune system how to fight HIV without actually exposing it to the live virus.
That's the beauty of mRNA vaccines. They can be incredibly safe and effective because there's no actual virus involved.
All right, I'm sold on this mRNA thing. Are there any HIV mRNA vaccines actually in development? Or is this all just pie in the sky talk?
There are definitely a few in the works. One promising candidate is being developed by Moderna, the same company that nailed one of the COVID mRNA vaccines.
Moderna. Those guys are like the rock stars of vaccines these days.
They're definitely killing it. Their HIV mRNA vaccine is still in the early stages, but initial results in animals are looking good.
Animals again? Are those damn monkeys back in the picture?
Monkeys and mice, actually, but you get the idea. We're using animal models to get the kinks worked out before we start testing in humans.
All right, Doc, you've just dropped a ton of knowledge bombs on us. My head's spinning. We've talked about epic fails, promising new tech, and those damn monkeys. What's the bottom line? Give it to me straight. Are we actually getting closer to an HIV vaccine?
Look, it's been a long and frustrating road, but I'd say we're in a much better place now than we were a decade ago. We've learned a ton about HIV and how to potentially outsmart it. With these new tools in our arsenal, I'm cautiously optimistic.
Cautiously optimistic. You're killing me with the suspense, Doc. Spit it out. Do you think we'll actually see a working HIV vaccine in our lifetime?
I wouldn't bet against it. But this is science, not a crystal ball. We've still got a lot of work to do.
All right, fair enough. We're going to take a quick break, grab a beer, and let all the science sink in. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back to finish this deep dive into the wild world of HIV vaccine research.
So before the break, we were talking about these badass BNAbs. They're pretty fascinating, really.
Yeah, those Navy SEAL antibodies, they sound like they could kick HIV's ass. But remind me again, how the hell do they actually work? Do they just blow the virus to smithereens?
Not exactly smithereens, but they do a damn good job of neutralizing the virus. Basically, they latch onto specific spots on HIV's outer shell, the part it uses to break into our cells.
So they're like bouncers at a club telling HIV, nope, not tonight, buddy, you're not on the list.
That's a pretty good analogy. They block the virus from attaching to and infecting cells.
Yep.
What makes BNAbs so special is that they can take down a whole bunch of different HIV strains, not just one specific variant.
Hold up, so one antibody can handle multiple flavors of HIV. That's some seriously impressive shit.
It is. That's why they're called broadly neutralizing. They're not picky eaters, so to speak.
All right, so if these BNAbs are so damn effective, why aren't we just injecting them into everyone and calling it a day? Problem solved, right?
I wish it were that simple. The problem is our bodies don't naturally make enough of these BNAbs to fight off HIV on their own. It's like having a handful of elite soldiers trying to defend a whole country. They're good, but there just aren't enough of them.
Right, makes sense. So can't we just cook up a batch of these BNAbs in a lab and pump them into people?
That's actually an approach being explored right now. It's called passive immunization, and it involves using lab-created versions of BNAbs called monoclonal antibodies.
Monoclonal antibodies sounds fancy. What the hell are those exactly?
Think of them as clones of those naturally occurring BNAbs. We basically copy and paste the genetic code for those antibodies and mass produce them.
So it's like having an army of clones fighting HIV for you.
Exactly. And the early results from trials testing these monoclonal antibodies are promising. Some studies have shown they can actually prevent HIV infection, at least for a while.
For a while, what's the catch?
The effects wear off over time, so people would need repeat injections, not exactly a convenient solution.
Yeah. Nobody wants to be a pincushion for the rest of their lives. So monoclonal antibodies are cool, but not a permanent fix. Back to square one.
Not quite. They could still be a really valuable tool, especially as a preventative measure for people at high risk of infection.
You mean like pre-EP, that daily pill people take to prevent HIV?
Mm.
So instead of popping a pill every day, you'd get a shot every few months?
Exactly. It could be a much easier option for some people, but ultimately the gold standard would be a vaccine that teaches the body to make its own BNAbs. That way you've got your own personal army of HIV assassins ready to go at a moment's notice.
Right. We need to turn everyone into their own little antibody factory.
Mm.
But you said that's not easy. What makes it so damn hard to get the body to crank out those BNAbs?
It all comes back to HIV's damn shapeshifting. The virus is constantly evolving to dodge the immune system, making it a nightmare to target with a vaccine.
So it's like trying to hit a moving target, but the target is also a master of disguise.
Exactly. The traditional way of making vaccines by using a weakened or inactive virus just doesn't cut it because HIV changes so damn fast.
Okay, so we need a smarter strategy. What are the brainiacs in the lab doing to outmaneuver this sneaky little bastard?
One approach is to focus on those rare parts of HIV that can't change much without screwing up its ability to function.
So instead of aiming for the whole damn virus, we're going for those tiny crucial bits that can't hide.
Exactly. It's like finding the weak spot in its armor. Scientists are getting pretty good at identifying these vulnerable points. There are a bunch of experimental vaccines in development that are designed to specifically trigger the production of those BNAbs.
So we're basically trying to engineer a vaccine that forces the body to produce those Navy SEAL antibodies.
You gotta, it's a long and complex process, but there's been some serious progress in recent years. Some of these experimental vaccines have shown good results in animals, and a few are even being tested in humans.
Animals? Back to those monkeys again.
Well, monkeys are still an important part of the research, but scientists are also using other tools, like humanized mice.
Humanized mice? What the hell is that? Were we talking Mickey Mouse with a human immune system?
Pretty much, these mice are genetically engineered to have human immune cells, which makes them a much better model for studying human diseases.
That's some seriously freaky science.
Yeah.
So these Franken mice are helping us figure out how to make better HIV vaccines.
They let researchers test different vaccine strategies and see how a human-like immune system responds in a controlled environment. It's a pretty valuable tool.
Okay, I'm starting to feel a bit more optimistic about this whole thing. We've got our BNAbs, our lab-grown antibodies, and these humanized mice. Feels like we're slowly but surely chipping away at this HIV vaccine problem.
I'd say so. We've definitely come a long way in understanding HIV and how to tackle it.
But we're not there yet. What are some of the biggest hurdles still standing in our way?
One major challenge is HIV's crazy diversity. There are tons of different subtypes of the virus out there, each with its own unique set of mutations.
So even if we come up with a vaccine that works against one subtype, it might not be effective against others.
That's the worry. It's like trying to find a single key that can unlock a million different doors.
Shit, that sounds like a nightmare. How the hell do we solve that problem?
Well, remember those mosaic vaccines we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, the Frankenstein vaccines?
Those are designed to tackle the issue of HIV diversity head-on. They combine bits and pieces from different subtypes into a single vaccine, hoping to create something that can handle a wider range of HIV variants.
So it's like creating a master key one that can unlock all those different doors?
Exactly. The goal is to show the immune system a buffet of HIV antigens, increasing the chances of developing those broad, potent antibodies we need.
That's some clever thinking, but are these mosaic vaccines actually showing any promise, or is it all just theory?
There's definitely some real potential there. We've had some clinical trials testing mosaic vaccines, and some have shown encouraging results.
Encouraging, you say, don't hold back, Doc. Give us juicy details.
One trial called HVTN 705 Imbokodo, which I mentioned earlier, tested a mosaic vaccine in young women in sub-Saharan Africa. While it didn't completely prevent HIV infection overall, there were some promising signs of efficacy in certain groups.
All right, I will take any win we can get at this point. So, mosaic vaccines are a potential game changer. What else have you got cooking in the HIV lab?
Well, there's another exciting area of research we haven't touched on yet.
Oh, come on, Doc. Don't leave us hanging it. What else is up your sleeve?
We're looking at another type of vaccine technology that's been making waves lately.
Wait a minute. Don't tell me you're talking about those mRNA vaccines, right? The ones they use for COVID.
Bingo, mRNA vaccines have been a total revolution in the vaccine world now. Scientists are trying to figure out if we can use the same tech to tackle HIV.
All right, I'm officially intrigued. How the hell do these mRNA vaccines work their magic?
It's pretty mind-blowing, actually. Instead of injecting a weakened or inactive virus, or even just pieces of it, we inject a set of genetic instructions.
Genetic instructions, you're making my head spin, Doc.
Bear with me. These instructions basically tell the body's cells how to build a specific protein from the virus.
So instead of giving the immune system a target to practice on, we're giving it the blueprints to build the target itself.
Exactly. The cells then use those instructions to create the viral protein, which triggers the immune response.
That's some seriously futuristic shit. We're basically teaching the body how to fight HIV without ever actually exposing it to the real deal.
That's the beauty of it. mRNA vaccines can be incredibly safe and effective because there's no live virus involved.
Okay, I'm officially on board with this mRNA stuff, but are there any actual HIV mRNA vaccines in the pipeline, or is this all just a bunch of science fiction?
There are definitely a few in the early stages of development. One of the most promising ones is being developed by Moderna, the same company that made one of the successful COVID mRNA vaccines.
Moderna, those guys are like the rock stars of the vaccine world right now.
They're definitely at the forefront of the field. Their HIV mRNA vaccine is still in preclinical testing, but the early results in animals look pretty damn good.
Animals again, and those monkeys are working overtime.
Well, monkeys and mice, but
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
the hope is that this mRNA vaccine will eventually move into human trials.
All right, Doc, you've just thrown a ton of information at us. We've talked about epic failures, promising new tech, and those hardworking lab monkeys. What's the bottom line? Do you really think we'll see an HIV vaccine in our lifetime?
It's been a long and winding road, but I'd say we're closer than ever before. We've learned a shit ton about HIV, and with these new technologies like BNAbs, mosaic vaccines, and mRNA, I'm cautiously optimistic.
Cautiously optimistic, huh? Don't be shy, Doc. Give us the goods. How long do you think it will be before we have a vaccine that actually works?
Look, if I had a crystal ball, I'd be rich. Vaccine development is a complex process. It takes time, but
Spit it out, Doc. Give us a number.
all right. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a licensed HIV vaccine within the next decade, maybe even sooner.
A decade. Damn, that's still a long way off, but gives us something to hope for. All right, folks, we can take a quick break to let all this science sink in. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back to wrap up this deep dive into the wild world of HIV vaccine research. All right, you science-loving bastards, we're back and ready to wrap up this HIV vaccine deep dive. My brain's still buzzing from all this talk about BNAbs, mosaic vaccines, and mRNA wizardry. It's like we just went through virology boot camp.
It is a lot to process, but I think the main point is that HIV vaccine research is a really dynamic field, with new discoveries and approaches popping up all the time. It's not stagnant. Things are always evolving.
So after decades of banging our heads against the wall, it sounds like we're finally making some real progress. Would you say we've turned a corner?
I think we're definitely on the right track. We have a much deeper understanding of this damn virus and the obstacles in our way, and with these new technologies like BNAbs, mosaic vaccines, and mRNA, we've got a whole new arsenal to work with.
Okay, so we've got the tools, but how long is this whole vaccine development process going to take? Are we talking years, decades, or are we all going to kick the bucket before we see a working HIV vaccine?
That's the million-dollar question, and unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball. Vaccine development is a marathon, not a sprint.
Years, decades. Come on, Doc.
It can take years, sometimes even decades, to go from the initial research to a safe and effective vaccine that's ready for the public.
Yeah, I guess good science takes time, but with HIV, time is a luxury. We don't really have. People are getting infected every day, and we need solutions now, not in some distant future.
Absolutely. There's a huge sense of urgency in the field. Researchers are working their asses off to speed up the process, but we can't sacrifice safety or efficacy for speed. We've got to get it right.
Right. We don't want another situation like that Merck trial where the vaccine backfired and made things worse. Talk about a major fuck-up.
No doubt that setback really highlighted how complex and unpredictable HIV is, but even with all the challenges and setbacks, there's a real sense of hope and optimism in the HIV vaccine community.
If you see.
We've learned a hell of a lot from our mistakes, and we're applying those lessons to new research.
Okay, so you're saying there's hope. Give us something to cling to, Doc. Do you really think we'll see a vaccine in the next decade, like you said earlier?
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. We've come a long way. And with the progress we're seeing, a decade feels realistic, maybe even sooner, if we're lucky. And the science gods are smiling down on us.
All right, I'll take it a decade. Might still seem like a long time, but compared to the decades we've already spent wrestling with this virus, it feels like a blink of an eye. So what can regular folks like us do to help speed things up, besides donating a shit ton of money, of course?
Money always helps. But there are other things you can do. Stay informed about HIV vaccine research and the progress being made. Support organizations that are doing the hard work on the front lines.
Right on.
Knowledge is power, and we need to be informed to fight this thing effectively.
We need all hands on deck. Anything else we can do to contribute to the cause?
Advocate for policies that make HIV prevention research a priority. Push for better access to healthcare and testing. Talk to your friends and family about HIV. Break down the stigma and encourage people to get tested.
Damn, Doc, you're making me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. It's not every day you get a dose of hope along with your science lesson.
Well, hope is essential in this fight, and the progress we're seeing gives us every reason to be hopeful. We're getting closer one step at a time.
All right, folks, that's a wrap on our HIV vaccine deep dive. It's been a hell of a journey full of twists and turns, setbacks and breakthroughs. We've talked about epic failures, groundbreaking science, and those damn monkeys who seem to be at the center of it all.
It's been a pleasure breaking it down with you. I hope you all learned a thing or two.
And to our listeners, stay curious, stay informed, and stay hopeful. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the wild and wonderful world of science. Peace out.